if you want to see Funmaster Mike's favorite example of cross-check, you need to strap in, get a sandwich, and be ready to have your mind blown away. When Funmaster Mike was a kid, occasionally a bully would call me a bad name, and one of the most common replies was, "I know you are, but what am I?" I'm not sure if kids still say that, but today, let's look at the chess equivalent of, "I know you are, but what am I?" What am I talking about? Well, you know, to get out of check, you have to capture, protect, or run away. Remember CPR? Yeah, way back 100 years ago when you learned how to play chess. Well, you can actually answer a check with a check in very specific circumstances, and today we're going to take a look at a counter check, or more commonly called a cross check. In our first example, it looks like it's going to be a draw. No, wait, it looks like white's going to win. If we trade queens, it would be a draw, and it looks like the winning move is just knight c7. Ah, but after takes and takes, you're in the Super King levels, you know that that's stalemate. Well, if we go back to our starting position, how is white winning? Well, white can actually play queen a6 check. Now black has to answer a check with a check by playing queen to a7. And it looks like black has what he wants, a trade of queens leading to a draw. Ah, but wait, we can answer a check with a check with a check? That's right, the third check in a row. White gets out of check by blocking black's check and putting black in check in the meantime. Yes, this all happened in a real game. Black only has one legal move, and then amazingly, with no pawns, doesn't matter, queen to c8 is checkmate. There we saw a couple of examples of a cross check. In our next example, we're going to take a look at former world champion Mikhail Botvinnik. In fact, this is the most common time that you are going to use a cross check in your chess. Queen and pawn endgames are by far the most prevalent example of this. And if you can get the queens off the board, if you're the side with the pawn, you'll usually win. Now, Botvinnik actually ended the game in one move here by just playing king c5. Why did black resign? Well, any check with the black queen results in a queen trade via a cross check. And of course, if you don't check, white will just promote because the white queen guards the promotion square. Hopefully you saw that the white pawn is on rank number 7, not rank number 2. That's right, it is one stop from promotion. Now let's take a look at what I'm talking about here. If the queen travels, for example, to c2 check, then white will answer a check with a cross check, forcing black to trade queens, and then white promotes. If black tries this check, then the cross check is queen d4. If black tries this check, then the cross check is queen c6. And are there any other checks? Well, technically, yeah. There's queen to g1 check, followed by the cross check queen to d4. I know from my previous video on how the queen moves, if I miss a single queen move, I'm probably going to hear about it in my fan mail. Okay, so here black has to allow the trade of queens no matter what he does, and that's pretty much time to resign. On to our next example. In this absolutely mental position, both kings are weirdly advanced past their castled pawns. I don't really know why, but hey, it happened in a real game. And it looks like black's actually in trouble because his rooks are being forked. In fact, if black played some really horrible move, maybe his own king would even get checkmated. But instead of a horrible move, black found the brilliant pawn to f3, cutting off the white king's escape from g2 and also unpinning this rook. Now white has to act really quickly because if white plays some sort of regular move, like capturing the rook, then black would actually play double checkmate. Now today's video is about cross check, not double check, but it's still so pretty I just had to show you. Double checkmate. Let's go back. Black plays the move f3, and as I said, white must act really quickly, so white tried rook c5 check, trying to get that black king away from his own king. And for example, if the black king moves, let's say to this square, there's even some forks coming up. But no, the whole idea is to answer a check with a check, so what does black do? Black plays rook to g5, blocking the check, while at the same time creating a discovered check. That is an example of a cross check. Now the funny thing is, white got out of check by also giving a check, so it's another example of a cross check answered by a cross check. But unfortunately for white, this doesn't really save him in the long run. Bishop takes g4 check, king only has one move, and now f takes e2 wins the game because no matter what white does after that discovered check, let's just say white moves the king for example, then we would have the incredibly weird double checkmate despite the fact that this rook is pinned. Okay, this was a mind bender of an example, but technically lots of cross checks did happen. Now, if you want to see Funmaster Mike's favorite example of cross check, you need to strap in, get a sandwich, and be ready to have your mind blown away. This is our only example where it is not from a real game. It's a study. We've already talked about how studies always have things end quite perfectly. Now first, pay attention to the pawn movements. The white pawns are traveling up the board. So yes, this pawn is one step from promotion, but don't promote it yet. If you do, queen f6 followed by queen to g7 is just going to be a standard checkmate. So don't do that. Instead, the only winning move for white, I'm just going to show you the beginning, we're going to get to the cross checks in a second, is the shocking, the amazing queen to h2. Oh no! Did you choke on your sandwich? I hope not. Grab some water. Let's calm down. We're going to get through this together. Okay, now why would we give away an entire queen? Well, to distract the black queen, right? We don't want to get mated on f6. So, queen takes queen. Now we play rook to b6 check. Okay, in this position, black has to block. Remember, the white pawns are traveling up the board, so just want to remind you, h5 is not available to the black king. Obviously, black doesn't want to block with the queen. He would just be in a completely lost position. So, black answers a check with a check of his own. That's our first cross check. Now, white answers the check on his king with a check of his own by capturing the bishop. That's the third check in a row. Black has to move the king. He only has one legal move, which happens to be a discovered check. That is our fourth check in a row. Now it almost looks like white can just play king to g7 and be on his way. But there's a problem. If king to g7, I'm going to start a series of checks beginning with queen c7. Funmaster Mike, you say. I can play king to g8. But not really, because then the black queen checks on a2 and keeps an eye on this pawn, and that's not really so clear either. I don't think that white's better in that position. So we've already had 4 checks in a row. Is it possible we're going to see a 5th check in a row? White answering a check with another cross check? Oh, indeed it is. Bishop to h4 is the amazing winning move. That's our 5th check in a row. If the king takes, then rook check simply wins the queen. So you don't want to do that. The best move is just to go ahead and capture the bishop. But when you capture the bishop, it's actually our 6th check in a row, by the way. Then the king comes to g7, and because your queen is on such a bad square, she can do nothing to stop this pawn. 6 checks in a row. The last 5 were cross checks. So would that be a cross check? I really have no idea. It's a crisscross, it's a mashup, and you know what? We're actually not done. Because although we're done with the cross checks, the game is actually not over. I want to show you the exciting finish because both sides have some very far advanced pawns. Black can fight on by playing pawn e2. White gets a queen. Black gets a second queen. And now the winning move here for white is just diabolical. In fact, there could be several winning moves for white, but the prettiest and I think the quickest is queen to b8, this little itty bitty move, threatening mate on f4. Now, if the king ever takes this pawn, rook to f4 check picks off this queen, and you're going to have to trust me, white will be winning with the queen and pawn against queen. He may even have to use another cross check to trade queens much later. And by the way, if the queen takes this pawn, at the very least, white can play this rook check, which will win the queen and again result in a winning queen and pawn endgame, amongst probably some other ideas. Okay, let's look at black's, I'm not going to say best defense, but certainly it's the ending that we want, I'll put it that way. Black can play queen takes e4, guarding the checkmate, and if the queens get one free move, oh baby, there's that check, there's that check, there's that check, there's so many checks. But white is winning. If you still have some of your sandwich left, put it down because I want to give you a fresh look. It's mate in 2 for white. Can you find mate in 2? Well, I don't think there's much regard for the queen in this game. White has already given away 1 queen, has allowed black to get 2 queens, and now white gives away this queen. Queen f4 check, the only legal move is to capture. And then, ooh, rook to g6. Does this make Fun Master Mike want to go back and redo his video on 10 fancy checkmates? Yes, I do. I really want to. Okay, but I don't think my producer has time for that. This is like a super fancy epaulette mate where the 2 queens get in the way of the black king, but this pawn stops the king from moving here or here. So I don't know what you call this checkmate. It's like an extra special epaulette mate. But anyway, I wanted to show you the finish. I think you can see why. Cross checks do happen in chess, especially in endgames, when you're trying to trade into a more easily winning endgame. Make sure you add them to your arsenal. Maybe you'll be featured in a Fun Master Mike video someday.